Now, a counterexample is a false example to show a conjecture or statement is not true. So it's, that the example that you can come up with to be like, oh no, this is not the only way this can happen. When we looked back at our first example with truth value, if you have $5, then you have five $1 bills. Well, a counterexample could be I could have one $5 bill. That would still tell me I have $5, but I don't just have five $1 bills. I could also have a $2 bill and three $1 bills. Or I could have a whole bunch of quarters. There's several ways that we could come up with $5 without only having five $1 bills. So just one example would be a counterexample. So let's take a look at our examples here. It says, which of the following is a counterexample to the statement? If a number is an integer, then it is a positive number. Now, this might be a little tough for you if you don't remember the rules about integers. Integers are whole numbers that can be positive and negative. Positive and negative. So looking at A, this is not an integer. So it is not a valid counterexample. It doesn't work. It is not an integer. I'm strictly talking about integers. Now, looking at B, the number 3 is an integer, yes. Looking at C, negative 1.5 is not an integer. So that would also not be a valid counterexample. And then D is negative 7. Negative 7 is also an integer. So I have two integers to choose from. I have 3 and negative 7. I want to find a counterexample. My statement says that if a number is an integer, it can only be positive. But the rules of integers are clear. Our counterexample would be negative 7. And for our second example, this might be a little more clear, but also if you're not super into the Olympics, this might be kind of confusing. If you are competing in the Winter Olympics, so again, just the Winter Olympics, then you must compete on snow. Well, there's several events that happen at the Winter Olympics. Of course, there are things that are skiing, snowboarding, but there's also a major event that people watch, and that would be some sort of event on ice. So there's ice dancing, there is speed skating, there are all those things like that. So just looking at my possible choices, swimming does not happen during the Winter Olympics. That is a Summer Olympic sport. Snowboarding happens on snow. And I'm trying to find a counterexample to the fact that it has to happen on snow. So snowboarding would not be an option either. Speed skating happens on ice. That's not the same thing as snow. That's not what I said. So actually, speed skating is an option. Looking at my last one, football. Football isn't even in the Olympics. And so this question might be tough if you aren't 100% aware of what all happens at the Olympics, but football is not a part of the Olympics. My apologies. So speed skating is our counter example for this one.